So Mary, thank you so much for coming in today, and you're all in your lovely sporty gear, and you've cycled, and lovely to see you looking so well. When I saw you first, I was totally taken aback because you just look so different. And if you can bring us back to how you started doing the programme, it was competition, and tell us from the start what happened.
So it was August 2017, and I had put on weight up until the beginning of the summer, but then I had a bad summer. I'd been on holidays with my family, and I must have eaten half of France's supply of croissants and everything. And I came back and I was feeling terrible, and I heard the competition on the radio, and I entered it. And the truth was, I entered it because I was completely and totally desperate, because I tried everything, and I really felt like there was nothing else I could try. And it was actually just a case of, well, I have to try something different. I didn't honestly believe it would work. That's the truth. It was just that it was something I hadn't heard of before, something I hadn't tried before, and I thought, well, maybe this might, but I didn't really believe it. So that was August 2017. I weighed just under 80 kilograms, which is 12 and a half stone, I think. And that's a lot for somebody who's 5'4". I'm also a very small build, and I actually remember my best friend saying to me, I mean like 40 years, and I said to her, I shouldn't be this size, I have a small frame. And she says, no, you have a big frame. Now, if my best friend of 40 years thought that I had a big frame, there was something wrong, because you can see here, I don't. But it was hidden, literally hidden below what was, a large amount of fat. So I felt terrible about myself. I was wearing this uniform, which was how I describe it, of navy clothes. I decided navy was the colour for me. It was the colour which could hide a multitude, and I would wear certain trousers and certain tops, and I felt hideous. They had to be long tops which kind of disguised the extra bits of fat, and trousers that wouldn't make my legs look too big, etc., etc. And I had such a small range of clothes to wear, and I started every day on a bad note because I felt depressed getting dressed, looking at the narrow range I had and all the beautiful clothes that I had that I couldn't wear. So that was my frame of mind. I really just felt so incredibly low. I'd lost so much confidence, and I'd actually started to believe the message in my mind was, you actually can't lose weight. It just can't be done. So that was where I was. And when I won the competition, I came in, I sort of thought they'd say to me, you're not that bad actually. And then I go, oh, that's grand so. But they didn't say that at all. In fact, when I got that little piece of paper and it said that I had the metabolism of a 57-year-old, I nearly died. I mean, I knew what the numbers were roughly going to be, but there were other indicators about my fat percentage, and I was a pound or two off obese. And yet when I asked people about that, they said I didn't necessarily look obese because I actually looked like quite a lot of the population, which isn't a good thing, but I think it's become more the norm. So if you'd see me walking up the street and go, yeah, she's carrying pounds, she is carrying weight. The other problem was I haven't got great knees, and I was having really bad pain in my knees, getting upstairs, downstairs actually in particular, and I used to dread coming downstairs. So when they did that initial consultation, I realised, oh dear, this is as bad. I can't be in denial now. There are experts here saying, yeah, you're not in a great position. But, the message wasn't delivered that way. It was confirming everything I believed, but there was a very powerful message of, we can do something here. And because I was so desperate, I did what I was told, which is not something I'm very good at doing, to be brutally honest. But I did do as I was told. What I really liked about the beginning was everything was explained to me slowly in great detail, and I felt like I got an education, actually. I felt like I got more of an education about my body and how it works, and my mind, and a kind of a holistic picture that I've never ever had in my life. And I have a lot of education behind me, and I realised how ignorant I was. I was embarrassed, and I was actually kind of annoyed with myself and the world that I had been so ignorant about just the mechanisms of my whole body, and that I was putting in things and doing things and thinking in a certain way that were doing me no good, and yet I was completely ignorant. I actually didn't realise any of this. So that was the start of the journey, and that was in August 2017 when I was 79 kilograms, feeling terrible, and then I got told, but there is a way forward. And I decided to embrace it because, quite frankly, I had honestly no other options left to me because I had tried everything. So that's the start. Every week thereafter, it was so good having a really caring person. So I was given Patricia in Dawson Street and Blanchardstown clinic, and Patricia is this lovely, kind, but very gentle, but very honest and very knowledgeable person who is so incredibly well trained, but she could see for me that I was in a fragile place. You know, I had very little self-esteem when it came to my looks, my appearance, my body, and yet, so I never felt really criticised. I felt supported, I felt motivated, and I felt educated. And I really felt like I was kind of brought on step by step, very gradually, and not sort of pushed anywhere I didn't feel comfortable, not too much too soon. So week by week, Patricia would talk me through the programme, and I really liked that, you know, we talked about where I was having difficulty, but also what was going well. Because I think, for me, in the past, I mean, there were a few triggers for me. You know, there was obviously things like portion size, you know, and that's easily actually remedied, you know, with one of those little cups that I used. I mean, the funny thing was I was always eating porridge, and so, you know, Patricia says, yeah, use one of those cups to measure, because I'm not really mad for the weighing scales. I'll use it, but I love the cup, right, because I can just stick it in the cup and that's my amount. So I remember the first morning making the porridge and going, is that all I get? Sure, I take 3 times this amount, I won't be full. And so I had my porridge, I went off to work, and I wasn't hungry. And I realised that I had been eating 2 to 3 times the amount that I needed. And I was still full when I ate the right amount. And that was the first signal to me that, wow, I'm eating too much. So little easy things like that. The tips about drinking enough water. I was not aware that I should be drinking more water. I certainly wasn't aware that sleep was an important factor. So little things like that, and keeping the diary was very, very useful for me, because I could actually see that, you know, what I've been doing. And so what I really, really like about motivation is it's a very reflective process. It's very much about and this is something that in our society we're starting to value more. I mean, you know, doctors, nurses, all that, you know, people who are involved in reflective practice, it's all about what am I doing and how do I want to do it differently if it's not getting me what I want. My problem as someone who was trying to lose weight was I didn't quite know how to change what I was doing. Whereas motivation says to me, look, this is a picture of what you're doing right now when I write it down, you know, on a diary, and then I can see, oh, well, I didn't have breakfast that day. Or I left it too much of a gap, or I didn't have protein, and whatever the case may be. So this diary and my conversations with Patricia helped me to start to realise, okay, actually there's a pattern emerging here. And I started to see patterns really quickly, which was, you know, the massive gap between lunch and dinner, and getting crazy hungry, or you know, the sugar cycles I found myself in of, you know, trying to constantly feed that craving and not knowing how to get out of that cycle. And all of a sudden, a few very simple steps, like having protein, small amounts on a regular basis, meant I wasn't getting. It was really transformational for me to do something quite small that would have such a radical effect on my physiological well-being, but also on my mental and emotional state. So as the weeks went in, when I saw that it was working, I was genuinely shocked, because I didn't feel like, there are programs I've read, and see, by the time I've read the program, like, here, lads, I'm exhausted after reading that, never mind doing it. But I didn't feel like that with motivation, because I felt like there were tweaks, because I eat good food, actually. I'm not the person who was constantly eating takeaways, and lots of my friends are like that. I was just eating too much of certain kinds of food. I wasn't eating frequently enough. I wasn't drinking water. I was starving myself. I was eating late at night. All of those things. I might even be really, really good all day long, and go, wow, I shouldn't be putting on this weight, but actually I've been starving myself half the day, not getting protein, and then at night time I would probably have, you know, all the rest of my calories plus more. And actually I was probably doing damage within a single few hours. When I realised that I needed to look at my day as a whole and start to space out my food and not deprive myself and not starve myself and do this thing that I had been doing for so long, things just changed so quickly. So when I was getting on the scales and I was losing the weight, I was like, this is actually working. I can't believe this is working. I don't feel like I'm starving myself. Every time I did another program, I'd feel like, oh my God, this diet. You know, I can't have this, I can't have that. They're telling me to eat as much of that as I possibly can. And some of the things I was being told to eat lots of, I didn't even agree with. They were foods which I felt like, yeah, I get that they're low in fat, but I don't think nutritionally they're doing me any good. Whereas on motivation, you know, I was told, look, it is important to have your dairy, it is important to have fats, you just need a smaller amount of them. You do need your carbs, just have smaller amounts of carbs. So I wasn't cutting out any one food group. It felt like a really sensible program. And I remember saying to my husband, this is great, I'm eating lovely food, but I'm just changing, and because I'm changing the amount that I eat and I'm changing when I eat it, but I'm not changing actually the foods that I genuinely enjoy. And something else interesting happened, which was that there were foods which I never thought I'd enjoy, I started enjoying, like salads, because I started finding ways to make a salad interesting without making it ridiculously fattening. But I also realised that if I organised my food in such a way, I could put a little bit of very light dressing on it, or I could put something interesting in it, like a few nuts or a couple of grapes, but not like 30 grapes, you know, 5-6 grapes to just spice it up, or whatever the case may be. So my husband actually finds it really bizarre, because he has a fairly good diet and he likes healthier foods, and some of the healthier foods that I said I didn't like, I started to develop a taste for as well. And I think something shifted in me, something about the way I viewed certain things. Food was always very, very important to me. And I think food is genuinely very interesting in terms of flavours, but it was kind of the thing that controlled me. I thought about it an awful lot. And there was a moment when I suddenly went, because I wasn't ever actually very hungry, because I never let myself get hungry, food stopped being that important to me. You know, I mean, food is only a type of substance, right? It's only the thing that fuels our body, and it's great if you go out for a nice meal. But I was always thinking about food, because I was always either really, really hungry or sickeningly full. And when I was really hungry, I'd be like, oh no, that chipper, you know, even though I didn't go very often to a chipper, or, oh, I'd love that lovely rich sauce, you know, with cream and cheese. And I mean, I love cream and cheese. But they became really big in my head. And when you're not hungry, you know, it's great to have a tiny bit, but you're not driven by that. You're not driven by this craving. And you can make much more sensible choices when you're not very hungry. That's mine. Anyway, sorry, I've just talked for about 10 minutes.
Perfect, the more the better, that's perfect. Just to go back to what you said with regard to awareness, that the program created an awareness for you. I know when we met when you came into Sunshine and we met, I had a copy of your mental weight report, and I remember very clearly having a look at the guilt, particularly, and having a look at all the triggers that were there, and particularly the guilt. I think, if I'm right in saying, at the time it didn't really resonate with you. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, how you did your mental weight report?
I think that's a really interesting aspect, and I know it doesn't affect everybody, but because you know, Dr. Maurice LaRocque has talked about it on his CDs, and the penny eventually dropped. And what I realised is that in the past, whenever I have managed to lose weight, I've self-sabotaged by, if I had a bad day or a bad week, I got into this type of cycle in my head saying, you failed, you're a failure. And then, I wouldn't have articulated this, I wouldn't have even been aware I was thinking this, but I believed that I didn't deserve to succeed, because I wasn't good enough. And so it becomes almost a self-fulfilling prophecy. And in a way, you're kind of going, you deserve to put on weight. And so you nearly start to prove your mind's messages. So even if you have a bad week, the max you're going to put on is a couple of pounds, right? And if it stopped there, you'd be fine. The problem was, when those negative messages kicked in, my mind wanted my body, in a way, to prove it. And so I'd eat more and more, until eventually my weight matched what my mind was telling it. Something changed for me, because as I started to get towards my goal weight or lose weight, when I'd have a bad couple of days, and I would talk to Patricia, and I'd say to Patricia, I just feel like, that's terrible of me, and it's really bad of me to do that. And she said, whoa, hold on a second. Are you don't, just because you have a bad day, that doesn't mean that's the end of it. You just start again. Or I had a day in the office recently where it was a really crazy day, and I had meetings, and I got to 5 o'clock, and I hadn't had a bit of protein at about 4, which is what I'd normally do. And I happened to, from months ago, I had a packet of these rice cakes with yogurt on the top, right? They're not what I would normally eat, because actually they're laden with calories, right? The bit in the top is the worst bit, right? Actually, they were stale, but I was so desperate, right, that I ate 3 of them. And then I looked at them and went, oh, Jesus, they're 74 calories each. I was like, 200 calories? Ah. But instead of going, well, that's everything ruined, I did a mental adjustment. I went, right, it's grand. Look, you needed something. I just want to have spuds for dinner. That kind of thing. I didn't beat myself up, because it's okay to do that some of the time. If we didn't, Jesus, you'd be depressed, you'd go crazy. And we have to allow for the fact that our bodies crave things. And sometimes Patricia would say to me, your body might be craving something at the moment. Go easy on yourself, and then you'll adjust it tomorrow, the next day, whatever the case may be. I could be perimenopausal for all I know, but now I'm realising that this is not about all or nothing. And I was always an all or nothing person. And what I think is fascinating about this programme is, it's the holistic approach. It's about me understanding the kind of person that I am, and how does my thinking and my attitudes affect my behaviour. And so the cognitive behavioural therapy aspect of it, when Dr. Maurice talks in the early tracks on the CD about how something happens, and then I have a thought, I have an emotion, and then I react. For me, I always thought that the part that I could control was my emotion. I never realised that it was the thought, actually, that I could control. And that was transformational for me, because when I start to think to myself and give myself these positive messages like, listen, you had those 3 rice cakes, it's not a big deal. Okay, it's 200 calories. So the protein bar you're going to have later is just under 200 calories, right? It's got higher protein, it's better for you. But just don't have that protein bar. Or maybe I'll go for a walk. It's not the end of the world. I just adjust a little bit. And, there's weeks when I go in and I might weigh a pound or so more than I did last week. And Patricia will go, well, your water content could be up. Or, you'll just adjust it. And if you put on 4 or 5 pounds, you will, instead of going, well, that's me gone now, I'm gone off that track, and really what that means is I'm going to be 20 pounds heavier. No, it doesn't. I'll just adjust backwards. I'll just maybe drop my calories, or do a bit more exercise, or just watch my portion size. I will reflect, and I'll stand back a little bit and go, well, what have I been doing differently? And what do I need to do? And when I said earlier about this idea of reflective practice, all it is about standing back at the end of a day or a week or a period of time and going, what am I doing in my life? And keeping an eye on that. So I found it difficult in the beginning when I got to my goal weight. So it took me, I started in August, and by about the following May, June, I was pretty much where I wanted to be. So I started at, 79, and by that stage I was at about 60, 61. So I'd lost about 19 kilograms. And I wasn't doing a huge amount of exercise. I was doing regular exercise, but it was about the food for me, actually. And I do more exercise now, but I was worried because I was so busy in work. I was like, I don't have time to exercise, so I don't have time to lose weight. And that's absolute crap. Of course you can get more toned with exercise, but for me, it's 70% what I put into my body. exercise will make me nice and toned and fit, and that's fantastic. It's very important for how I feel, but food is a huge part of it. So anyway, when I got towards my goal weight, I did start to, I started to have these feelings about how am I going to maintain this? How am I going to, get enough calories? I didn't want to lose any more weight actually, because I was good at that point. And then it was a period of saying, right, I'm not going to look at what I eat every single day, because I was still going to the end of the day, right, I had this, and I was still in a bit of obsessive kind of thinking. And what I've had to learn in the last year is how to have a sort of an overview, this holistic picture, okay? Look, how, that was a good day, or I suppose instinctively, my instincts are a lot more honed. I am a lot more in tune with my body. There's something really interesting on the mental weight questionnaire. There's a few really, really interesting questions. In the beginning I fought it, and I thought, oh, this is just some American, even though I know it's Canadian bullshit, excuse the language. I did think it was one of those things, but I actually think the questions are quite brilliant in some cases, because they say things like, do you ever walk past a bowl of fruit or sweets and pick them up? And I remember thinking, well, yeah, I might pick up a bit of fruit. What's wrong with that? That was so interesting for me to realise that actually sometimes I was eating without even knowing it. I mean, I had done that hand action of fruit bowl, grape, mouth, not consciously. There was no, I suppose I was eating in a way that wasn't remotely mindful. I often couldn't have told you what I put into my body, and I think that's part of the problem. I think, certainly for me and friends I've spoken to, if you said, how much did you eat today? Ash, I only had that, and that. Actually, I think if you had a camera over your shoulder, you would be quite shocked by what you ate, by that thing that you picked up there. And you think you had a few crisps, or you think, actually you didn't, you had far. This is me, this is what I was doing. When I started doing that mental weight questionnaire and those questions, every few weeks, I started to think about those questions in between and thought, okay, so if I'm actually doing that, it's not great. It's asking me, am I drinking enough water? Am I criticising myself and others? I mean, that one blew my head, actually made me quite angry, because I was highly self-critical. And that is very detrimental for me and my well-being, because when I criticise myself, it's not just about, oh look, I didn't do that well enough. Actually, that's a pattern of how I behave around myself. Not just my work or my relationships, my relationship with food. And so, for me, I mean, there's an awful lot that I can take into my bigger life. And actually, I've started to do more reading around my own personal self and just about my own well-being, because of the things that motivation has brought up for me. Because I've realised you can't treat food in isolation. And, this is about the whole person. And so I've started to now look at, do some reading and talk to people and things like that, in order to explore myself more, to understand myself better, because that food is a symptom of other things. So it doesn't mean that I had to start somewhere, and where I had to start was to be guided in and educated in my food, but it's taken me on a much bigger journey, which I think is really significant.
Super. Do you think you could have lost the weight by just dieting alone? What difference do you think the mental weight report and the whole CBT side has?
No.
What has that done?
No, look, of course I could have lost weight, and I have done, and I think many of us have lost weight on a diet, but I've never kept it off. I didn't understand what I was doing. There was no logic in what I was doing. There was no understanding. There was actually no plan, to be honest with you. That was about calories, and it was an obsession with calories. Calories are rubbish. Okay, of course we have to look at roughly how many calories our body's taking, but that's not it. We have to understand physiologically why we're craving certain things and doing certain things. Like I said, I was picking up food. I've done those in the past. If none of them ever explained to me about why my body needed certain things like proteins, why I needed to look at the way I was thinking about things, my attitudes. if I follow some of the programs, they will tell me to have, look, you can have as much of that, as much of that, as much as that. What they're not telling me is that eventually I'll crave X, Y, and Z, and that there's no long-term picture of that, because I haven't really changed. Nothing in me has changed. I'm looking at food in isolation. That's not the case. If you are 5 or 6 pounds overweight, and you decide, I'm going to drop my calories, that is fine. But I don't believe that you come to motivation to lose 5 or 6 calories, okay? If you only need to lose 5 or 6 calories, the chances are you have a fairly good way of eating and looking after your body, okay? I didn't come to this program because I did. I came to this program because my thinking was actually quite skewed, and because I didn't have a genuine understanding about how my body worked. And that is how I got 3.5 stone overweight. Not because I could just have a little diet. That's crap. I wouldn't have kept it off. And I fundamentally believe that I needed to be re-educated in so many aspects about my body, but also about my thinking. And that, in my opinion, is why motivation is so different to anything else I knew about or I tried, because it looks at the person as a whole and it treats this as symptomatic. And Maurice Roch, on his CDs, talks very little about food, actually. He talks about our thinking and our attitudes and our behaviours. And eating is one behaviour, but I guarantee, in reality, if your eating is out of control, there's probably other things that are out of control. That's just my opinion.
Can you remember what your mental weight was when you were starting?
Oh God, yes.
What was it?
My physical weight was 12.5 stone, and I think my mental weight was 15.5 stone. And that terrified me. It terrified me. I didn't fully believe in it, because I did think, how in the name of good Lord do you actually know what my mental weight is? Now, understanding the mental weight questionnaire, it is so on track. And the reason I know it's on track is because once my thinking changed, my mental weight changed, and now my mental weight is very much on par with my actual weight, because I believe that actually the way I'm acting right now is what will keep me on track, because my thinking has changed. Don't get me wrong, I have bad days, I have bad weeks. The difference is that it's not all or nothing anymore. And I say to myself, that's okay. If I put on a pound or two, it's fine. I just need to look at what I've been doing. Has anything changed? Have any of my habits changed? And on a couple of occasions I realised, actually I haven't been drinking enough water this month. On another occasion I thought, I haven't been doing my 4 o'clock protein. And now I know it's something that I keep an eye on. I changed job halfway through. And so I had to go, right, okay, so my lifestyle, my daily routine is changing. I need to change my because I pack my food. I organise my food. I don't leave the house without like a little protein sachet. I'll usually have maybe a couple of rice cakes, maybe a bit of fruit and some water. That's not actually a big deal, to be honest with you. Somebody said to me recently, my sister-in-law actually, I was telling her about it, and she goes, girl, is it a big effort? And I said to her, okay, it probably takes 15 minutes of my day to organise, but I think I'm worth 15 minutes. And actually, to be honest, what that 15 minutes otherwise would have been spent doing is probably watching the TV. For me, 15 minutes has completely transformed my life. My shopping is different, but I still have to walk around the supermarket whether I'm going to buy crap or whether I'm going to buy good food. I just buy different foods. And I'm organised. But that organisation, I mean, you have to cook. You know, my sister-in-law, I described a meal for her, and she goes, does that take a long time? And I said, well, so to peel a courgette and to make some nice courgette style pasta, I said, it takes me about 1.5 minutes. I said, how long does it take you to peel your spuds? And she says, yeah, okay, fair point. You know.
Great point, very good point. So your mental weight was 15 stone starting off?
Yes.
And what is your current mental weight, and what did you notice most? What changes did you notice most in the actual report?
So my current mental weight would be pretty much on par with my actual weight. So my actual weight now is, I think it's 9.5 stone, and my mental weight is thereabouts. It shifts, it fluctuates very little actually. What did I notice? The guilt thing is changing for me. The guilt thing is definitely changing. Let's see. What changed from the beginning was just around my attitudes towards food in general. And I mean, I remember when I started, I wasn't drinking much water and getting enough sleep and things like that. Those kind of things, snacking, my awareness towards food and kind of picking up food and things like that, that changed too. And the frequency, you know, the amount of meals that I have per day, that changed as well.
Okay, super. And then, last but not least, you reached target in, when did you say you reached target?
Around May or June, so almost, say about 11 months after I started.
Okay, you reached target. So, and then how long have you been maintaining your weight, if you can tell us about the maintenance side for you?
A year. So it's been a full year now, and for me, that has never ever happened before. My habits and this sounds like such a platitude, but it's true, have changed. Anybody who, it's funny, I started a new job actually the week after I started Motivation. It was one of the things that I really wanted. I wanted people to know me as something different to what I had been. My colleagues now I'm known as the one who brings in, I throw a bag of salad, I throw a cucumber and a load of things into a bag sometimes on a Monday morning, I bring them into the office. They know me as the salad person, right? I think differently in many respects about food, about myself. I've made huge progress. So for the last year, I would say I've maintained it for a year, but actually from very shortly after I started this program, my habits changed a lot. And I think that it's not about the weight for me, it's about the thinking, it's about the habits, and it's about the person that I've become. Of course I want to be this weight, but because my habits are like this, I'm going to be this weight. I am not that person anymore. I could not, and I will not go back to that way of thinking, because it served me no justice whatsoever. It did nothing good for me, and I didn't feel good, and now I do feel good.
Brilliant, absolutely brilliant.